What is going on, everybody? Wally here with another video, and in today's video we're talking about the synopsis of the recent lore video I did for Prison of Elders on the Planet Destiny channel. Now, before you go anywhere, if you haven't watched it yet, there will be a link in the description below and a link in one of the cards or on the screen somewhere. I recommend pausing it, checking it out. It's about 15 minutes long. It's one of the longer videos I've done, and it sort of goes over pretty much all the information that I thought necessary to be covered inside the Prison of Elders to give you the best, I guess, synopsis or just relative information so that when you go in there, you kind of understand what's going on, what are the backstories for some of these characters and factions, and why everything is in the place it's currently in. But on top of that, if you have not seen it or if you've already seen it, the idea with this is that I'll do a synopsis video after each lore video I do. So go over some things, so we have a little bit more of a discussion about it. We have a great discussion going on in a lot of lore videos in terms of the things we do on the community group, which is also a link in the description. So if you want to talk more lore, go there. But first off, let's just get right into it. So this will be a little bit more informal, just a little bit relaxing. I want to go over some of the things that bothered me and some of the things that I attempted to cover that I don't know if I did such a great job. So the first thing, of course, is the names. The names, you guys know me pretty well. I do butcher a lot of the mispronunciations, and it's just some of the things that I have to sort of take flack for, probably because I just don't really speak the English language as well as I could, or I don't articulate my words as well as some other individuals out there. Now, you can't make everyone happy. YouTube is a fickle beast. I'd say majority of the individuals, majority of the feedback so far has been fantastic. I read through most of those comments just to make sure, pretty much like I read through all of the comments in the lore videos that I do anyway, to make sure that the common conception is that these are good videos, I'm going in the right direction, I missed a couple things here and there, or there's some contradictions that I may not have addressed. So the biggest thing, again, is the name pronunciation. I'm not very good at that, and if that does irritate you, I do apologize. I know that the first time I did that Toland video, I called him Toland or something like that, and everyone got really mad at me, and I completely understand that. So I apologize. I'm going to keep working forward to it. These are just names not native to the English language. It's the same thing with the Ahankara. It's just not. They're not native names to the English language. So unless you have an in with Bungie or anything like that, I would really, I kind of struggle with that. So just, try to look at it from my point of view. But the interesting things, I'm going to cover each one of the factions, and then I'm going to let you in on basically what I'm going to start doing next. So for the Hive faction, this is the faction that didn't get explained the most as some of the other factions did. And that kind of sucks because it talks about these worm keepers, and worm keepers are apparently some group of wizards in control of that particular hive brood inside the Prison of Elders. Now it talks about the worm keepers, but you don't fight a worm keeper boss. You don't fight like a grander wizard, which is really interesting because you think generally when you're fighting the hierarchy, knights and ogres typically are below wizards in terms of their ability to just deal out pain in a way, right? But obviously the bigger the ogre is, and some knights may be higher up than wizards. It's just weird. Sometimes that hierarchy is sort of fooled around with a little bit. So I guess it's a common misconception that the hierarchy that is presented in the game is the hierarchy that's presented in standard. So, thralls are your lowest, then you have acolytes, then of course you have your knights, ogres, and technically your knights are above your ogres because ogres are just mindless beasts, and then on top of it you have your wizards, and then on top of that you have your hive deities, but sometimes that's not always true. Sometimes the wretched knights, for example, or the flame prince is a pretty good example of this. Some people believe that the flame prince is a son of Oryx, even though I'm almost positive that's not even stated anywhere in the card. So it's interesting to see where some of these, I guess, where they go in the direction. I would have liked it to fight like a unique wizard inside the Prison of Elders, particularly like the Wormkeeper or Wormkeeper, whatever the name of that character would be, to give it a little bit more of a fleshed out story to make it a little bit more sense. Because what you're fighting is Wormkeepers along with Golrot, but they're not the boss. They're just elite wizards that show up that are uniquely named, but that's it. So you don't fight them when you fight the Wretched Knight or Urox, but you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that kind of irritated me. I was like, oh, where are these worm keepers? These things are cool. Maybe that's just me. Overall, I think the Hive bosses were the most interesting in terms of mechanics. I think the other bosses were kind of weak, but that's a story for another time. Covering the next is the Vex. Now, the Vex are always probably the most interesting enemy in terms of what they can do with time and why they're there and why they're not there. But again, this one wasn't explained as much as I like. So they're there because they believe in some prophecy that the light, which is you as a guardian or guardians in general, is coming to the prison of elders, and it's their job to eliminate that light or snuff it out or eat it, whatever the Vex particularly do, because they're big, mean, bad machines. But it doesn't fit the overall understanding, or maybe it does, but the overall understanding of the Vex is that we don't really understand why they do what they do. You know, they're supposed to be that ultra unrepresentable race that we cannot compare ourselves to because we just don't get what they're doing. They're operating at a level so far beyond us that we sit there and we're like, okay, why are they in the Vault of Glass? What is the deal with the oracles? Why are they worshiping some moving jelly object inside the Black Garden? You know, these are all questions that are not answered, largely because I think that it's part of the mystery that is surrounding them. It's supposed to be this like shroud that is used to describe the Vex in a particular way that is very interesting, yet sort of devious in nature, that we don't completely understand them. Like, we understand why the Fallen do what the Fallen do. We understand sort of what the Hive are. We understand the Cabal, but we don't understand the Vex. The Vex kind of operate outside of our understanding in a way that is really interesting. So I think that if there is that question, why the Vex are the way the Vex are, it's because of the way their characters are presented. It's presented to be mysterious. It's presented to be like, you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's Lovecraftian in a way. You know, our very conception of trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing is meant to drive us insane. So it's very interesting that that is sort of applied. There's not a lot of information there. I think that, obviously, you know, for me, I want more information. I want to know what they're doing every time, but I understand why it's not there in terms of that Lovecraftian presentation of an enemy. The next one I want to cover is the Cabal. Now, the Cabal have always really interested me as a faction. So it's interesting to see that you've got this rogue Cabal faction that has come into the Reef and thinks it's a strategic point of interest, which it typically is in terms of solar system-wide strategic representation of what are good places to hold up and what are good places not to. But what doesn't understand me is why an entire Cabal Legion would go there and you know, try to solo the Reef. We know that the Reef Armada was able to defeat the Wolf Armada in sort of a offshoot kind of way. Now, like, the Reef and the Wolves did not go 1v1, and the Wolves were not unified in their effort to take down the Reef. But it still sort of is that drawback. You know, the Cabal are obviously running from an enemy that's been confirmed now. Whatever that enemy is, maybe it's Oryx, maybe it's something else, is still up in the air. It's probably Oryx. Like, Oryx is probably right now fighting the Cabal in the Hive, and they're in the Cabal system with his Hive forces or with his Taken. So that's going to be really curious to see how that pans out. I think a lot of people have been craving more Cabal information, and I think with the next DLC, we're going to see a lot of it. We saw a bit more into it in this DLC. It's not covered too much because the only cards that are presented are the one on Tarug and Arun and a couple others discussing the Prison Elders. But in reality, it's a very interesting presentation of a potential enemy and why they are acting the way they are. So you have this rogue Cabal Legion that disobeys orders from the Cabal High Command. The only reason the guy is calling himself Valis is out of spite to the other high commanders inside the Cabal hierarchy. And then you've got a bunch of dudes that are loyal to him, and they're called the Broken Legion, which is, again, very interesting. Sort of doesn't make sense. You would think that if you were part of a command structure or military structure, you would not take all of your soldiers and go AWOL to fight some crusade inside the Prison Elders because you think it's a strategic point. You know, generally military hierarchy is pretty determined off of loyalty and chain of command, that you don't often see that. Although in Roman history, sometimes you would see that Roman legions were only loyal to commanders and not necessarily loyal to politicians back in Rome. So if the Rome nation or the Rome creation is sort of the vibe and inspiration of the Cabal hierarchy, then it does make sense that certain Cabal commanders have the legion's loyalty more so than the legion itself is loyal to the Cabal high command. So that, again, makes sense, sort of breaks that military chain of command. Again, I think that they were kind of looking for a way to put the Cabal in the Prison of Elders by being as true to the lore as possible. But again, it sort of breaks that notion that the Cabal are this militaristic only faction. They're this Sparta representation. They only want to fight. They only follow orders. And they're only there to just kick ass. Very, very interesting. The last one, of course, is the Fallen. Now, the Fallen are always that interesting faction. So the Fallen at this point are pretty much the ones that are in there are the ones that you've recaptured, or the Reef Corsairs have recaptured or have already been there and have stayed there. And of course, you fight a lot of interesting enemies. Mainly, Calyx is probably the most interesting one, or Calyx, and the fact that they've rebuilt him to have this sort of hodgepodge of different servitors loyal to this cause to rebuild this new monstrosity, this new servitor in a way, so to revitalize the house. Because previously in vanilla lore, the way it was presented is that Calyx was gone. He was missing after the Reef Wars. The Queen's forces couldn't find them. It was my suggestion that we're going to fight Calyx in House of Wolves. We're going to see him in a raid, because generally Prime servitors are always the top end. Sepik is pretty much the main dude for the House of Devils, so on and so forth. So it sort of caught me off guard when they brought him back in such a way that it suggests that the original Calyx is gone, although it isn't said anywhere that Calyx or Calyx is completely dead. So he could still be out there. We could see him again at some point in the future. It's like the whole Toland, Eris Morn thing. It's not specifically said that Toland is dead inside Eris's fire team. So there's a lot of suggestions there that, unless it's not specifically stated, in my opinion, you can't write off that character yet. I think it'd be very cool in the future point to bring back a Prime servitor from the House of Wolves or any Fallen House to make them relevant again, and sort of the big bad, oh, the House of Wolves are back in 15 DLCs from the Rhine, that Calyx found some darkness energy or whatever. I think that keeping certain characters in and out is very interesting, although potentially we may see this written off. The fact also that they're bringing in pilot servitors. I think pilot servitors are very cool. The fact that we've never seen them before, but we knew they've existed for some time. And now that the House of Wolves are so desperate that they need to be able to bring their pilot servitors, which are mainly there to fly spaceships and maintain their fleet order, have to be on the ground fighting. Now, Skolas utilized these in the Reef Wars. There's a bit talking about how he used them for like suicide tactics, because they are just so durable in battle that you just send them at an enemy. And you guys have fought the pilot servitor. It sort of fits that mentality. That thing just eats bullets. That's all it does. Now, again, that could be a question for it has way too much health. But at the same time, if they're attempting to fit the lore with the actual game mechanics, that one makes sense. That thing is a huge ball of death that just eats everything. So it makes sense that Skolas would use these as suicide attacks against any Fallen that may have came at him, which is, again, super cool that it sort of fits that way. That may be me taking it to an extra stretch and saying, yeah, this is how they explain why the pilot servitor has so much health in Prison of Elders. But it is, as always, interesting. Finally, you fight Skolas, and I didn't cover Skolas at all because he needs his own video, and I'll probably get a little bit more in depth with Skolas and everything like that, because there's a couple interesting theories, like what are those horns on his back? That's probably the biggest thing that I want to question. Now, I'm going to go as far as say, and I may even suggest this in the video when I finally do it, is that those are horns of Ahamkara, which is, sort of why he is acting the way he is, why he thinks he's the Kel of Kells, because generally the lore with the Ahamkara is this really prideful being, this infusion of the ability to think that you're better than everyone else around you just by holding the littlest things. Like in the lore card, the Warlock is holding the smallest invertebrate, and he's saying, he's basically just challenging the Hunter out of pride, and it's like the smallest thing. Could you imagine what 2 horns do? So it's very interesting, just sort of that implication. I think that's a general direction I'm going to go in, maybe. I'm also going to cover Osiris, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. I want to know, did I cover the video right? Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? Did I miss some things? Should I have covered some things better? I don't know. I'm really curious for feedback, and I want to know what you guys think about doing these as sort of little synopsis videos to sort of be able to deliver content on the Planet Destiny channel, but at the same time respect the fact that you guys came to lore here first and want that information in the best way. This video dragged on a little bit longer than I thought, about 14 minutes, but whatever. That's fine. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you guys have the opportunity to come see me on the Planet Destiny stream team. I stream generally every Monday through Saturday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific. So if you guys have an opportunity to come in and see me and say what's up or make fun of my bald head, feel free. I have pretty thick skin, and I can take the heat sometimes. Most of the time. I don't cry myself to sleep. But you guys are awesome. I really appreciate you guys sticking around, and I really appreciate you guys going through this transition with me of where I'm putting content. You guys have been very supportive of the fact that, I kind of choose to do what I want to do, and that's what I love most about you all. I hope you guys have a great day, and if you need anything in the future, please hit me up. I love you all. I'm out. Peace.